Welcome to the Pardes channel. Today we explain Exodus chapter 24 in a clear and simple way, step by step. This is just an absolutely pivotal moment in the biblical text. Think about where we are in the story. The Israelites have just escaped Egypt, they've crossed the sea, and they finally arrived at the base of Mount Sinai. Up until this point, they've been given this series of laws to follow, but now the actual relationship between God and the Israelites is about to be officially formalized. We're talking about a chapter that is literally packed with dramatic visuals, ancient rituals, and some incredibly intense moments of leadership. My goal in this explainer is to really guide you through these events so you can picture exactly what is happening on the ground at the mountain.
Now, to really get what's going on here, we are going to strictly follow the concept of Peshat. If you're not familiar with that term, it basically means we are focusing solely on the simple, literal meaning of the text. So we aren't going to dive into complex allegories, esoteric secrets, or deep symbolic interpretations today. We really just want to understand the who, what, where, and why of this chapter exactly as it is written. We're going to look at the historical text and understand the actual physical actions that Moses and the Israelites took.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our structured journey today. 1. Approaching the mountain. 2. Sealing the covenant. 3. The divine encounter. 4. Moses ascends into fire. 5. Practical life lessons. And finally, a summary and recap.
Part 1. Approaching the mountain. We are looking at Exodus 24, verses 1 through 3.
So, right out of the gate, the Lord is speaking to Moses and setting up very strict, super clear physical boundaries for how the people, and even the leadership, are allowed to interact with the divine presence at Mount Sinai. God is essentially establishing order before this grand ceremony takes place. According to verses 1 and 2, God explicitly tells Moses to come up to the Lord and to bring Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel. Now, for context, Aaron is Moses' brother, basically his right-hand man. Nadab and Abihu, they're Aaron's eldest sons, representing the next generation of leadership. And the 70 elders represent the recognized leaders of the entire Israelite community. But here's the catch. Even though they are invited up the mountain, they are instructed to worship at a distance. Only Moses is permitted to approach the Lord completely alone. The rest of the Israelites, the general population down at the bottom, they're not permitted to come up the mountain at all. So you have this very clear, tiered structure of physical access based entirely on their roles in the community. Following these instructions, Moses goes back down to the people. Verse 3 tells us that he relays all the Lord's words and laws to them. He lays it all out on the table. He gives them the full terms of the agreement. And their response? It's completely unified. They say, everything the Lord has said, we will do. This is a massive, immediate commitment from the entire nation. There's no hesitation, no back-and-forth negotiation. They hear the laws, and they collectively agree to abide by them right then and there.
Moving right along to Part 2, Sealing the Covenant. This covers Exodus 24, verses 4 through 8.
Okay, so the people have verbally agreed, but words are no longer enough at this point. In the ancient world, an agreement of this magnitude required a formal physical binding. So early the very next morning, Moses gets to work. Here is the step-by-step ritual he performs. First, Moses writes down everything the Lord had said. Then he builds an altar at the foot of the mountain, along with 12 stone pillars. Step 2, Moses sends young Israelite men to offer sacrifices. They offer burnt offerings, which are called olot in Hebrew, representing total dedication to God, and fellowship offerings. These were specifically young bulls called shalamim, which represent peace and a shared, healthy relationship. Step 3, Moses takes the Book of the Covenant. That's the document where he just wrote down all those laws and reads it out loud so the people hear the exact terms once again. And they reply a second time saying, we will do everything the Lord has said, we will obey. And finally, step 4, which is honestly the most striking action of the entire ritual. Moses sprinkles the blood from the sacrifices. Before we talk about the blood, I want to highlight the number 12 from step 1. Moses set up exactly 12 stone pillars at the base of the mountain. Why 12? Well, it's pretty straightforward. They specifically represent the 12 tribes of Israel. You see, this wasn't just a deal being made with a few top individuals. This altar and these pillars served as a permanent physical monument, proving that this was a collective, national covenant. Every single tribe literally had a stone representing their presence and their commitment to this agreement. Now, regarding step 4, the sprinkling of the blood. In verse 6, Moses actually took half of the blood from the sacrifices and put it in bowls, and the other half he sprinkled directly onto the altar, which represents God's presence. Then, after reading the book and hearing the people agree again, Moses takes the blood from the bowls and sprinkles it directly on the people themselves. He declares, "This is the blood of the covenant that the Lord has made with you in accordance with all these words."
Now, to our modern ears, that might sound a little intense, right? But in the ancient Near East, blood represented life. So by placing half the blood on the altar and half on the people, Moses is visually and literally binding the two parties together in a life and death contract. It is the ultimate sealing act of this entire covenant.
Part 3. The Divine Encounter. Exodus 24, verses 9 through 11.
With the covenant firmly sealed, those boundaries that were set back in verses 1 and 2 are now acted upon. Moses, Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and the 70 elders go up the mountain. And what happens next is arguably one of the most visually breathtaking and totally unique moments in the entire biblical text. The text in verse 10 tells us plainly, "They saw the God of Israel." Now, remembering that we are sticking to the Peshat, the literal text, we have to look at exactly what is described here. The text doesn't actually describe God's face or form. Instead, it describes what is beneath him. It says, under his feet was something like a pavement made of sapphire, clear as the sky itself. Just imagine the imagery here. These leaders are standing on a rugged, dusty desert mountain, but as they experience this divine vision, they see a foundation of brilliant, clear blue sapphire, as pure and expansive as the sky itself. It's just this overwhelming visual of divine royalty and majesty.
And this brilliantly illustrates the brand new status of their relationship. They saw the God of Israel. You have to understand, in the ancient world, there was a profound, deep-seated fear that seeing the divine meant instant death for a mortal. But the next point in the text is absolutely crucial. God did not raise his hand against these leaders. They were perfectly safe. And then comes the most remarkable detail of all. They ate and drank. Right there in the presence of the divine, on a pavement of sapphire, they had a meal. This is the culmination of those fellowship offerings we discussed earlier. It represents ultimate peace, communion, and a fully accepted relationship between God and the leadership of Israel.
Part 4. Moses ascends into fire. Exodus 24, verses 12 through 18. So the Lord speaks to Moses again, telling him to come further up the mountain and stay there, so he can receive the actual stone tablets containing the laws and commands. It is time for Moses' solitary ascent. The leaders have had their amazing encounter, but the process isn't over. Moses sets out further up the mountain with his assistant Joshua. Joshua is essentially his apprentice, the guy who will eventually succeed him. But Moses doesn't just abandon his post down below. He turns to the 70 elders and delegates his authority. He says, "Wait here for us until we come back to you." He officially leaves Aaron and Hur remaining with the people, stating that if anyone in the camp becomes involved in a dispute or a legal issue, they are to go to them. Moses is making sure the society will continue to function smoothly while he is away. So Moses goes up, and a thick cloud covers the mountain. The glory of the Lord settles on Mount Sinai. But interestingly, Moses doesn't get to speak with God immediately. The text in verse 16 notes that the cloud covered the mountain for 6 full days. For 6 days, Moses just waits in the cloud. It's a period of profound anticipation and patience. It isn't until the 7th day that the Lord finally calls out to Moses from within the cloud.
Now, what did all of this look like to everyone else? Moses is way up in the cloud, but the Israelites are still down at the bottom of the mountain looking up. Verse 17 describes an incredibly intense visual. To the Israelites, the glory of the Lord looked like a consuming fire on top of the mountain. It wasn't just a gentle mist or soft light. It was an awe-inspiring, frankly terrifying, blazing presence that dominated the peak. This fire is the visual anchor for the people while their leader is gone.
Then, verse 18 tells us that Moses entered the cloud and went further up the mountain. He actually leaves Joshua behind at this point and enters the divine presence completely alone. And the text says he stayed on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. Think about that for a second. This is a massive block of time for a newly formed nation to be without their primary leader, and it really sets the stage for everything that will happen in the subsequent chapters.
Part 5. Practical Life Lessons.
Even though we are reading a literal, historical text about ancient rituals and divine encounters, there is an incredible amount of practical wisdom embedded in the actions of these people that we can apply to our own lives today. Let's look at 3 grounded, everyday takeaways from this chapter. First, the power of unified community commitment. When the Israelites said, "Everything the Lord has said we will do," with one single voice, they demonstrated how powerful it is when a community fully aligns on a shared goal and a shared set of values. Second, the importance of delegating leadership. Moses was the main conduit to God, right? But he knew he couldn't do everything. Leaving Aaron and Hur in charge of settling disputes shows us that true leadership involves trusting others and ensuring systems are in place so your community doesn't just fall apart in your absence. Third, practicing patience during periods of waiting.
Moses literally sat in a cloud for 6 days before God spoke to him. Sometimes, even when you are exactly where you are supposed to be, you just have to wait. Patience is just a necessary part of the process. Part 6. Summary and recap. So, the crucial point is, how does this all fit together chronologically?
Let's do a quick replay of the sequence. We started with the boundaries being set, Moses, the priests, and the elders getting very specific instructions on how far they could go. Next, the covenant was officially sealed through the reading of the laws and the sprinkling of the blood, locking in that agreement. Then, we witnessed the divine encounter, where the leaders safely saw God on the pavement of sapphire and shared a peaceful meal. Finally, Moses delegated his leadership and ascended into that consuming fire, remaining there for 40 days and 40 nights to receive the stone tablets.
Which leaves us with a massive cliffhanger. Moses is gone into the fire. The people are waiting at the bottom of the mountain. What will happen to the Israelites while Moses is gone for 40 days? Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.